Carter Reynolds stared into the cracked screen of his company-issued iPhone, his thumb frozen just above the Slack icon, the silence of the empty conference room pulsing like a migraine behind his eyes. The message was still there, pinned at 2:17 a.m. in a private group chat called Sanity Check. He wasn't supposed to see it. Hell, no one outside that group was. But the universe had a way of glitching, and sometimes when the Wi-Fi lags just enough, when you tap too hard or not at all, you slip into places you were never meant to go. And there it was. The CEO is a child in a man's suit. Carter's an overpriced mannequin with a god complex and a dead stare. He doesn't lead. He watches like he's waiting for someone to slip. The message was from someone on his team, someone he had just promoted last week. Pause. You're not watching a video. You're in a room you don't remember walking into, watching something no one else is supposed to see. The camera doesn't pan. It lingers. On Carter's hand, trembling. On the fluorescent light above, flickering like it's trying to warn him. This isn't about a bad day at work. It's about the moment a man realizes he's been studied, not followed. Praise to his face dissected behind his back. And worse, it's not the insult that wrecks him. It's the fact that the chat was locked. Encrypted, hidden behind a firewall he hadn't even authorized. HR didn't know about it. It had no records, and the group? Not 6 people, not 10, 32. Names he saw daily. Some who shook his hand last week at his daughter's 6th birthday party. One of them even babysat her once. The first strange thing happened 2 days later. During a budget meeting, as Carter flipped through a slide deck that didn't match what he'd sent, something shifted. There was a name on the final slide in red font, bold and alone. Everett. No title, no context, just Everett. No one. And the room blinked. No one asked. No one saw it but him. That night his daughter said the name in her sleep. She's never heard that name before. She said it again at breakfast, tapping her cereal bowl twice like a code. Everett says the glass is thin. Carter didn't sleep that night, because Everett wasn't real, not until now. You think that's the twist. It's not. Yesterday, one of the employees from the Sanity Check chat, Haley Morris, clocked in like normal. ID scan, security. Camera ping, elevator swipe. But by noon she was gone. Not fired, not transferred, gone. Desk cleared, laptop deactivated, security footage erased. No resignation, no HR log, no digital footprint. Carter asked around. No one remembered her. Not even her direct manager. Not even the intern who'd had a crush on her since February. Now here's the part you'll pretend you didn't hear, because your brain is about to file it under impossible, just to keep you sane. Carter didn't just see the chat again. It updated. New message. Time-stamped 3 minutes after Haley vanished. Phase 2. The mask is watching the mirror. One more wrong laugh, and we reset. Below it, just one name, Carter. He hasn't spoken in hours, but tonight someone, something, called. His home phone from a blocked number and played a recording. It was Carter's voice, but he never said those words. And in the background, you can hear his daughter saying Everett again, only this time she's not alone. The phone slipped from Carter's trembling hand, shattering the stillness with a hollow crack that echoed through the sterile kitchen. But the recording kept playing, looping that impossible moment like a ghost trapped in a broken vinyl. His voice, his unmistakable voice, speaking words he never uttered. And in the background, his daughter's whisper threaded through the static, fragile and clear. Everett. A name carved into the fabric of his reality that no one else acknowledged, no one else understood. Or was it even real? Because just as suddenly as the recording played, the line went dead, leaving Carter to stare at the dial tone like it was some kind of riddle he couldn't solve. The phone now nothing but a cold plastic relic in his palm. The house, his house, felt less like home and more like an echo chamber of his unraveling mind. The walls held their breath, the shadows gathered closer, and somewhere in the spaces between seconds, a question gnawed at him. Not what was happening, but if it was happening at all. Because no one else had seen the chat. No one else heard. The name Everett whispered in the dark. Haley Morris had disappeared from every record but one, the log in his locked inbox. The message was there, but the world insisted it wasn't. The line between truth and delusion blurred, and the thin glass his daughter spoke of seemed less metaphor and more a fragile barrier cracking beneath the weight of his unraveling perception. And then there was her, Mara Bennett, who showed up at his door just when the silence around his life became unbearable. Mara was an old friend from college, or at least he thought so. She appeared like a breath of cool air, a balm for his fraying nerves, but every smile she gave carried a subtle edge of something unspoken, something jagged beneath the surface. Mara claimed she had answers about the sanity check chat, about Haley, about Everett, but her story shifted every time Carter pressed for clarity, slipping through his fingers like smoke. One moment she'd speak with certainty about corporate espionage. The next she'd confide in him about seeing shadowed figures in her apartment, whispering truths only she could hear. Mara was both his ally and his enigma, her presence both comforting and deeply unsettling. "You don't have to face this alone," she said one evening, her voice soft but with an urgency that raised goosebumps along his arms. Yet, in the same breath, she questioned whether any of this was real, or if it was just his mind fracturing under pressure. "The truth behind what no one tells you," she called it, a phrase that now echoed in his head like a sinister mantra. She pulled out her phone and showed him a recording, grainy, distorted, a voice he didn't recognize warning about the mask watching the mirror, the same phrase that had haunted his inbox. But the timestamp was from weeks ago, before Haley vanished, before any of this started. How? Why? Carter wanted to believe Mara, wanted to trust someone, but the more he listened to her half-truths, the more he found himself doubting everything, including himself. Memories slipped away like sand through his fingers. Entire conversations he swore they'd had vanished when he called her back. Phone calls with static where Mara's voice warped into something alien. Messages deleted before his eyes. Was she protecting him, or was she the architect of his crumbling reality? The silence in his apartment stretched thin, broken only by the faint hum of a voicemail notification. The message was from an unknown number, another glitch in his fractured world. When he played it, the voice was eerily familiar, soft and distorted as if speaking from the depths of a well. "They don't want you to remember," it whispered. "The glass isn't just thin, it's shattered." And then nothing but static. At night, when the house quieted and the shadows stretched long, Carter found himself reaching for his daughter's baby monitor, half expecting to hear the name again. Sometimes he did, soft, like a secret carried, on the wind. Other times, only silence or worse, a faint whisper he couldn't place. The boundary between his waking life and the dark corners of his mind thinned, reality folding back on itself like a sinister puzzle with missing pieces. Was the sanity check chat a real group or a symptom of his spiraling paranoia? Was Haley really gone? Or had she never existed outside his fractured perception? Was Mara Bennett a savior or a saboteur? And was Everett a name from a buried past, or a nightmare waiting to consume him whole? The answers danced just out of reach, hidden in the spaces between truth and madness, in the whispers of what they don't want you to remember. And somewhere beneath it all, Carter knew the final reveal wasn't just going to end careers. It might erase everything he thought he knew about himself. And then one night, as the clock struck 3:17 a.m., the phone rang again. This time, the caller ID showed a name he hadn't seen in years, one he thought was dead. Carter's hands trembled as he stared at the battered manila envelope resting on his kitchen table, the peeling edges worn from years of neglect. Inside, he found a stack of faded photographs, brittle letters, and a single yellowed newspaper clipping that sent a shiver crawling down his spine. The headline screamed from the page like a ghost from the past. Corporate scandal shatters. Small town, executive disappears without a trace. The date was nearly 20 years ago. The name? Everett Mason. The same impossible name whispered in his daughter's sleep, scrawled in red on a presentation slide no one else saw. For the first time, everything clicked. The chat messages, the vanished employee, the cryptic warnings. They were echoes of something buried deep, a secret stretched thin across generations. The letters inside the envelope were typed, formal but desperate, penned by an employee named Linda Crane, an assistant at the same company Carter now led. She wrote of a shadowy figure she called the Mask, someone who manipulated, watched, and erased those who threatened to uncover the truth. "They are always watching," one letter read. "The glass is thinner than we think. Break it, and they come for you." Her words matched the chilling phrase from the chat. Carter's heart hammered as he realized this wasn't a new nightmare, but a recurring one, a cycle repeating itself with uncanny precision. He thought he'd found the truth, a hidden history of corporate cruelty, paranoia, and disappearance. The pieces fit. The mystery was finally uncovered. Yet, as he pored over the materials, a gnawing sense of unease settled in, deeper than fear, a memory glitch at the edge of his consciousness. The faces in the photographs weren't just strangers from the past. They looked hauntingly familiar. The assistant, Linda, bore an uncanny resemblance to Mara Bennett. The executives shared the same sharp, unreadable eyes he'd seen watching him in the present. Carter blinked, heart sinking as he realized these weren't just echoes. They were reflections, memories his mind tried to shield, buried beneath layers of denial and time. A cold realization spread through him. "You're not crazy." They lied. To you. You've lived this before, and you forgot. As the evening shadows thickened, Carter's phone buzzed. Another voicemail. This time it was a recording from Linda's voice, crackling through with static but unmistakable in its urgency. "They never leave the house once they've seen the truth. They don't want you to remember because if you do, it ends the game. They watch from everywhere. Your phone, your walls, your mind. And when you think you're safe, the mask smiles in the darkness." The words twisted in his gut like a knife. He knew then that what he was facing wasn't just corporate sabotage or a mental breakdown. It was something older, more pervasive, a force that had watched from the beginning, shaping memories, erasing people, manipulating reality itself. Just as he set the phone down, a sudden flicker of light caught his eye. From the living room window. For a split second, he thought he saw a figure standing just beyond the glass, impossibly still, watching. When he blinked, it was gone. But the dread lingered, heavy and intimate, as if the air itself was thick with unspoken warnings. Carter's breath hitched, and the room seemed to pulse with an unseen presence, one that was less a person and more a shadow inside his own mind. He reached for Mara's contact to share what he'd found, but the name wasn't there. Her number had vanished from his phone. No messages, no calls, as if she'd never existed. His fingers trembled over the screen, searching for answers in a digital void. Then, buried beneath the pile of old documents, Carter found a crumpled photograph he hadn't noticed before. It was a candid shot of a family picnic, his own family, but the faces were blurred, distorted, and there, almost hidden in the background, was a shadowy figure, unmistakably wearing a mask. The photo was dated 5 years ago, long before the chat, before the disappearances, a memory he should have had but didn't. The room spun as a cold whisper echoed in his mind. You never really escaped. You're still inside the glass, still being watched, and the mask has been waiting for you. In that moment, the fragile illusion of resolution shattered completely, and Carter knew the terrifying truth. Nothing had ever been solved. The story he thought he understood wasn't just unfinished. It was a lie, crafted to keep him looking in the wrong direction. Every secret, every message, every vanished person was part of a puzzle whose edges moved and changed depending on who was watching. The screen fades to black, but the echo remains, forcing you, the viewer, to rewind and watch everything again, to look for the cracks you missed, to question what you believed was real from the very start. Because now, nothing is certain, and the most dangerous secret is the one hidden inside your own mind. The moment Carter's world began to fracture wasn't unique to him. Somewhere else, in a quiet apartment miles away, Evelyn Harper sat cross-legged. On the floor, the glow of her laptop illuminating her tired face. She had been tracking the same strange digital footprints, fragments of conversations, cryptic phrases like, "The mask watches the mirror," and "The glass is thinner than they say," clues that no one else seemed to notice. Evelyn's fingers trembled as she typed into an encrypted forum, a digital gathering place only whispered about in hushed corners of the internet, where those like her exchanged pieces of a puzzle far too vast for any one mind to contain. "You were right all along," one message read, a lifeline tossed into the abyss acknowledging the fragments she had pieced together from found footage from 20 years ago, tapes that the government never released but had leaked in shadowy corners of the web. There was no coincidence that Evelyn was drawn to Carter's story. They were two threads in the same tangled web, both fraying at the edges, both haunted by memories that didn't fully belong to them. She had dreamt of him, strange, vivid dreams where the boundaries between waking and sleeping blurred, where a figure whispered secrets in a language just beyond comprehension. In those dreams, symbols appeared, a cracked glass pane, a shadowed face, a number sequence repeated like a mantra, each symbol a key only she and a select few could decode. The dreams felt like a call, a warning, a secret message encoded deep within her subconscious. When she woke, her notebook was covered in strange markings she didn't remember writing, the same symbols now appearing in Carter's digital space, hidden in pixelated corners of his encrypted chats. Meanwhile, miles away in a city neither Carter nor Evelyn had ever visited, a third presence observed the unfolding chaos with quiet detachment. Known only as the Watcher, this elusive figure catalogued every thread, every whispered name, every fractured memory with clinical precision. Their perspective was not clouded by fear or confusion, but sharpened by a terrifying clarity, clarity born of distance and something colder, something that rendered human doubt irrelevant. The Watcher knew that Carter's unraveling was not an isolated event, nor was Evelyn's pursuit of truth mere coincidence. They saw patterns invisible to others, a vast network of souls ensnared by the same unseen force, their identities slowly eroding under the weight of memories that weren't theirs and secrets that defied comprehension. The Watcher's notes were meticulous, filled with references to real, unsolved mysteries and the truth behind what no one tells you. But more than anything, they chronicled a deeper, more insidious reality. A reality where memory was a weapon, identity a fragile construct manipulated by a presence that thrived in the spaces between thoughts, in the flicker of a screen, in the silence between heartbeats. Carter and Evelyn were not victims but players, pawns in a game where the rules were written in shifting shadows, and every revelation was a trap waiting to close. Back in Carter's world, the sense of being watched grew unbearable. Messages appeared on his devices, never direct, always fragmented, a single word here, a half sentence there. "They remember you." One text blinked before disappearing. Another screen flashed briefly with a sequence of numbers and symbols, the same ones Evelyn had dreamt. The overlap was no accident. It was a silent communication, a shared code among the initiated, or perhaps a warning from the force that pulled their strings. Evelyn's own apartment was no sanctuary. Strange noises echoed through the walls at night, soft knocks that matched the rhythm of her heartbeat, static whispers caught on recording devices she didn't recall setting up. She began to question what was real. Her memories slipped like water through her fingers, some days feeling like a stranger in her own life. Names and faces shifted in her mind's eye. Moments once vivid now blurred or vanished entirely. The paranoia seeped into every corner, but she pushed on, driven by a conviction that if she could decode the symbols fully, if she could untangle the messages, she might glimpse the force behind the veil. Meanwhile, Carter's grip on reality weakened further when Mara Bennett reappeared, not as the friend he remembered, but as a ghostly echo, her presence flickering like a glitch in a corrupted file. She whispered truths that bent logic and sanity, speaking of layers beneath layers, and the watchers behind the watchers. He wanted to believe her, but every encounter left him more disoriented, questioning if Mara was a fragment of his fractured mind or something far more dangerous. The truth, if it could be called that, was never meant to be found. It was a riddle wrapped in shadows, a maze designed to break those who sought answers. Carter, Evelyn, and even the Watcher, each trapped in their own way, caught in a conspiracy. That wasn't just about missing people or secret chats, but about control over the very essence of who they were. Identity itself was malleable, memory a battleground, and reality a fragile construct constantly rewritten by an invisible hand. And as you watch this unfold, you feel it too. That creeping dread that you are not simply an observer, but part of something larger, something watching and waiting. The symbols, the whispers, the fragmented messages, they're not just clues in a story, they're a summons, a reminder that the glass is never just glass, and the mask never fully comes off. The screen flickers, glitches, then steadies. A new message appears, one word flashing briefly before vanishing. Remember. And with that, the story doesn't end. It fractures again, pulling you deeper, asking the unanswerable question, who is watching whom? Carter sat alone in the dim light of his apartment, the weight of everything pressing down on his chest like an invisible hand squeezing tighter with every breath. The files, the messages, the dreams, they no longer mattered as fragments of a puzzle or clues to a conspiracy. They were symptoms of something far more fundamental, a question that clawed at the marrow of his being. Why? Why had this force, this shrouded presence, chosen him? Why did it twist memory, unravel identity, and blur the line between reality and nightmare? And in that question lay a truth so raw, so personal, it threatened to shatter him. The truth was not about what had happened to Haley, or the vanished employees, or the shadowy mask stalking their lives. It was about the human condition, fragile, flawed, endlessly searching for meaning in the dark. Carter realized that what they called the mask was less an external enemy and more a mirror, reflecting every fear, every secret, every fractured piece of their souls. It was the relentless pressure of a life dissected by doubt, the crushing loneliness of being unheard, unseen, and unmoored. The mask was the part of himself he had tried to ignore, the pain buried beneath ambition, the memories too painful to hold, the guilt that gnawed at the edges of every decision. In the silence, Mara's voice echoed in his mind, a confession, whispered between fractured breaths. They don't want you to remember because remembering means feeling, and feeling means losing control. The line twisted deeper into his heart than any lie or betrayal. Control, was that what this was? A brutal test of how much of himself he could surrender before he disappeared entirely? Carter's fingers trembled as he reached for the phone. The message he had dreaded, yet needed, waiting to be heard. It was Mara's voice, raw and broken, confessing everything she never dared say aloud. I was part of it. I helped build the glass. I thought I was protecting you. But I was wrong. You weren't just watched, you were trapped. And maybe so am I. The words cracked something open in him, not rage, not forgiveness, but a terrible, aching empathy. She was not the enemy. She was as lost as he was, a soul caught in the same cage, fighting the same invisible war. In that moment, Carter faced a choice as old as humanity itself, to surrender to the unraveling, to let the mask consume him and become nothing but a shadow in the glass, or to reach through the fracture, to embrace the pain, the doubt, the raw, aching vulnerability that came with being human. It was terrifying because it meant letting go of certainty, of the neat stories that keep us sane. But it also meant the faintest flicker of hope, that in the ruins of what they called reality, there might still be something real left to hold. Onto he closed his eyes, breathing in the heavy silence. The line between dream and waking blurred, and for a fleeting moment he glimpsed a world where memory wasn't a trap, but a bridge, where the mask was not a predator, but a reminder of the self he'd buried. The truth was not an answer waiting at the end of the story. It was the story itself, messy and unresolved, filled with shadows and light, fear and courage, loss and the fragile hope of connection. And as Carter opened his eyes, the world felt different, strange, beautiful, and infinitely more terrifying. The screen faded slowly to black, and as the silence stretched, a final line appeared, soft, haunting, impossible to forget. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for stories you were never meant to hear. Until next time, remember, some truths don't want to be found.